Minister in the Presidency, Mondli Gungubele, and Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana held a media briefing earlier to give an update to the nation on the implementation of Operation Vulindlela. Let's get more on this. We speak to Rudi Dicks, Head of Project Management in the Presidency. Thank you very much for availing yourself this afternoon. Perhaps let's start with a bit of context. What exactly are we talking about for the benefit of some of our viewers who may have missed it? What is Operation Vulindlela?
Thanks, Nidu. Operation Vulindlela, firstly, is a joint initiative between the Presidency and National Treasury to try and address some of the structural impediments and constraints to economic growth. These are things that many people tend to talk about around rail, port efficiency, spectrum auctioning and getting ICT right, water and water use licenses, energy constraints, for example. These are very important. And while they, while the reform is to try and address those constraints, so that investment can take place, economic growth can take place, employment can happen. They are very important for everybody, right? So it's not just about creating an investment environment. It's also about creating that investment environment that can absorb more people into our economy and able to benefit largely many of the low-income households. So economic reform program is quite important and pertinent as part of the economic reconstruction and recovery plan of government. And it is a joint initiative to try and get many of those reforms across the table that have been binding constraints for some time.
And this was launched back in October of 2020. As we take stock, approaching the 3-year mark, how far have we come?
Quite far. You could see in the report that has been launched by the ministers this afternoon that many of the reforms have been completed or on track, and that's quite critical. Of course, there are challenges at some of the reforms, and so the report itself, honestly reflects those challenges. But I think we've made a lot of progress, and may I give you some examples? For instance, during the course of last year, we were able to launch the changes in the regulations around embedded generators and shift the amount of megawatts that you can apply for without a license, which is the threshold, and it's 100 megawatts. You may have reported on that. That has the potential to unlock close to 5,000 megawatts to help us, given the constrained energy environment that we face, where we open up the market space to allow private sector participants through embedded generators to build plants that supply for specific heavy industry mines, for example. That's important. We are currently working with industry to unlock a lot of the latent demand. For example, there are approximately 58 projects of embedded generators, totaling about 4.5 gigawatts. That's about 4,500 megawatts of embedded generation, valued at quite a sizable billions of rands. Another reform that I think is quite important, particularly for these viewers, is unlocking the spectrum auction. So allowing spectrum for telecos to be used. That reform was quite important because it's intended to bring down the price, increase accessibility to rural communities, make it much more cheaper for us to be able to communicate. And as you know, cost of communication in South Africa is relatively high. Having that reform has been important. So there are many successes. The report does indicate that, but I thought let's use those two examples as quite critical examples of some of the successes that we have seen.
However, there has been criticism, particularly from business, right, that some of the reforms remain in red tape. That's according to an article, at least, that I managed to spot from Business Unity South Africa's Cas Cavadia. Is there something to be said about that?
Well, I mean, we're working with business on unlocking those red tape issues. I mean, this is what we are doing. So, I mean, even with CAS and the BUSA team, we're working with the Minerals Council, which is one of the members of BUSA, including the energy intensive user group to specifically on the embedded generators. We're working with them to try and unblock some of the issues around environmental authorizations, reducing the time, registration processes that maybe inhibit, faster registration, grid connections, to transmission network with Eskom, water use license. So there is a concerted effort working in partnership with business to try and address some of these concerns. So I hear the criticism that is there, And I think that government hears this, and we've been working fairly hard in partnership with stakeholders to try and address many of the red tape concerns. And I think it's bearing fruit. I mean, I think this is the approach that we're trying to take, that, if we unlock these things as fast as possible and we deal with some of the regulatory impediments, it has helped. And we've seen it come through.
Well, a number of people, or rather, let me put it this way, I'm sure it's something that you're also aware of, right? The immigration debate that has really captured the imagination of the nation in the past couple of months. What of visa requirements, right? And creating an environment where we are able to attract people with the necessary skills that can help turn the tide.
Absolutely. This is one of the reform processes. I mean, just linked to that is that we've recently published, for the first time since 2014, the critical skills list, and that identifies some of the critical skills that we can import. I think that's an important process. Again, quite a consultative process that was run by the Department of Home Affairs and the Department of Higher Education. They were able to get inputs from social partners through NEDLAC, other inputs from those who are in the field of importing skills, a lot of the businesses that are multinationals. So that's an important thing. With that, we also have asked Mr. Avuso Msamang to assist us. He was the former DG of the Department of Home Affairs, to assist us on a review of the work visa permit system. And that's all about getting the high-skilled end jobs into our country, because we've seen the evidence. If we employ an engineer, the opportunities of multiplying a number of artisans that can be locally sourced has that ability. So if we are unable to get the local source jobs here, it's important that we are able to source it overseas to support the growth of our economy. The multiplier effect of some of the high-skilled, and this is important, it's about high-skilled, jobs that are not easily available in the economy in South Africa. And it's not about tracking all forms of skills, and that's why we have the critical skills list, because that guides us as to the kind of skills that we can import. But the work permit review system is being done, and we hope to publish that quite soon, so that reviews of the system could make it much more easier for us to be able to import those critical skills that are needed in our economy.
Rudi, these objectives are very noble, right? Stabilizing the electricity supply, reducing the cost of digital communication, and you've outlined how important that is for you and I, introducing competitive and efficient freight transport. You've also spoken about this also ultimately leading to opening up investment as well as creating employment. How long until South Africans can actually check that off their lists to say, well, I'm a beneficiary of this project, I'm a beneficiary of Operation Vulindlela. Oh, I can switch on the lights and I can, open the tap, and it's safe, consumable water. We've had a number of people coming onto the channel bemoaning our water quality in South Africa. So for this not to just be a talk shop or something that looks good on paper, but something that we can actually say, well, tick, tick, tick.
I agree with you. So it's easy to tick the boxes, easy to say that the reform has happened. For us, what we need to do from Operation Vulindlela is ensure that we design for outcome, for a better outcome, for a better impact, right? So this is quite critical. We try and move as fast as possible. It's why at the center of government, between National Treasury and ourselves, we are driving the process. It is working with many government departments to understand and work together around implementation and supporting implementation. And so, of course, I think it's quite critical that we work with speed. I think this is what the President had said. He wants to see us move with speed. He wants to see the reforms happen quite quickly. It's the critique that we have accepted all over, including from business and labor, that you guys need to work much more faster. We work in at breakneck speed, and we're trying to ensure many of the reforms happen. The point about this is not simply to tick the box to do. It's about, the reform happening and that we want to see investment happening. So let me go back to the auction of the spectrum, for example, that happened a few weeks ago, right? The auction raised raised more than 14 billion rand. What we want to talk about is, what is the consequence of that auction? What is the impact of that auction? Are we going to see billions of rands of investment by big telecos like Vodacom, MTN, and Telkom, for example? And that's when we are able to talk about cheaper, data cost, accessibility for many people, small businesses that require data and access to telecommunications for them to be able to do. So our eye is on ensuring that the impact does happen and that many people who, for example, are looking for employment, many small businesses who want to get into supply chains and get those opportunities are able to benefit as a result of the reform program. And I think that is pertinent. We want to see that move quite fast. We've given an undertaking. There are numerous time frames. We try and stick as close as possible to the time frames. Otherwise, there's credibility issues if we don't meet the time frames that are set there. So that's quite important for us to do going forward.
Fair enough. If you are at liberty perhaps to share, is this costing South Africans anything at all in the almost 3 years that this would have been in place? Just how much is it costing us, if anything?
Nothing. This is the thing about this, right? It costs absolutely nothing to do these reforms. I mean, there's no cost about, you require X 100 million to be able to do this. This is about improving the way we govern, improving the way we, partner with the private sector, getting investment going, creating the confidence. So there is no rand sent to Operation Vulindlela. It's about working on what we can do around the energy stuff and unlocking that and ensuring that we move towards a situation where there's no longer load shedding, or that we have a much more efficient and effective Eskom or electricity market in this case, working with Transnet on the ports and rail stuff, and ensuring we have greater investment and efficiencies in the port and rail. Water, as your segment earlier on around the quality of water, for example. This thing costs, doing this is simply implementing what we've committed to do as government and ensuring that we get it across the line as quickly as possible.
Rudi, that's very reassuring to hear, and since it's for the benefit of the everyday South African, we actually wish it all the success. Thank you very much for availing yourself this afternoon. Rudi Dicks, Project Management Head in the Presidency.